Hey there, Cynthia here, and welcome to my quilt lab. I am working on this lovely Solare block of the month. We're doing block number 7. It's this one right here. You can see there's 4 of them. There's one of them all finished. It is called the Prairie Queen. Just want to give a couple shouts out to Banyan Batiks by Northcott. They're the host of this lovely quilt designed by Bound to Be Quilting, and I, of course, am out of Adirondack Quilts in South Glens Falls. Check all the links below for more information, and give me a big old thumbs up. Let's see what this month has in store. Let's go. All right, so like I said, this is called Prairie Queen. We're going to be making 4 of these blocks. As you can see, it's a pretty decent sized block, right? So it's in the north, south, east, west of that center block, which we did a few months back. So this is going to be kind of surrounding it. Let's talk about what we got here. There are 10 fabrics. So let's see. We have fabric number 2. That's that pretty navy. 3 is this really pale blue. 4 is this pretty bright pumpkin-y color. Then we have fabric 5, which is the teal. Fabric 6 is that pretty beige there, next to fabric 7, which is that lighter kind of yellowy color. Then we have fabric 10, which are these kind of either dark orange or light brown, whatever floats your boat. Number 12 is that light teal color down here. 14 is this kind of gray blue. I don't know, it has a little bit of yellow in it too, kind of grayish blue. Anyway, and last but not least is fabric number 15, and it's this dark brown speckled in the center. So there's lots of fabrics here. So make sure you're keeping them all straight. Refer back to that page that shows all the colors and names them all so that you don't get lost or confused. And if you're like me and you get confused often, I actually drew up a picture of the block on a piece of paper. I actually did this in EQ8 and labeled everything just so that I knew exactly what colors were going to go where, even though the directions are right there and they're great. Just having something else visual as a kind of a landing pad of what we're going to be aiming towards is just my little tip and trick to get me started and keep me going. I've already done one. Let's do one together and talk about what you're going to find in this block. All right, so I got my fun little map here, and I did this with just a couple of the fabrics that are kind of awkward. You'll notice at the end of this month there is templates again, and so you know me, I like to show template version and paper piecing version because I really love paper piecing, and I just want to show those fabrics out. 7, and then 4 has an additional square. 12, 14, and 6, and you'll see kind of what I did here. So take a little pause after my explanation so you can maybe jot some notes down as far as how to cut all these. Every time I cut for templates or for paper piecing, I like to do the easy pieces first, so the squares or the rectangles, and then I use the rest of the fabric in order to make my templates. And you'll see in fabrics 7 and 4, they're these big triangle diamonds. I don't know what kind of call these, kind of kites, I guess, kite shapes, and they're going kind of cattywampus, either or. So there's 8 of them. And then the other pieces are these triangles next to the kind of kite versions. And you're going to have some going one way and some going the reverse way. That's why you see these shapes here going one direction and going the other direction. I had plenty of fabric to be able to do the paper piece version. You're going to even have even more fabric if you go ahead and do the template version as well. So no fear as far as cutting. Just, read through your directions, go slowly, think about it before you, take out your scissors or your blade. And there's my little tips and tricks. Let's actually look at those templates. You can see on page 29, there's the template. And if you've seen in my previous videos, what I told you was to just, if you want to turn these into plastic templates like we did earlier in some other ones, there's a template from months past. It's just this plastics template stuff that you can put on top and trace everything. You want to make sure that you are doing the little notches in the corners because those are going to be important when you go to piece things together. If you don't like the plastic, you can absolutely use paper. Just remember that paper tears a little easier, and I don't want you to tear through your fabric. So maybe if you're going to use paper, we trace it as a transfer using a pencil or a chalk to your fabric. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I love paper piecing, and so I did paper piecing. And what I did previously is I just traced this on a piece of paper, but I got to give a shout out to my friend Marcia, who is actually doing this block along with me. Thanks, Marcia. She said, oh, well, I just made a copy of the page and glued the pieces together. So I took a page out of Marcia's book. So thanks. Tell Marcia in the comments below, thanks, because she's brilliant. So I just cut them. I took a copy, cut them out, taped them or glued them together, and then I went and made 4, 8, 12, 16. 16 copies, because they're going to need one for each corner. And I put it on the Carol Doak foundation paper. It's that newsprint kind of paper. It's a little rougher, a little easier to rip through. But if you don't have this paper, don't worry. Regular office paper is just the same. Just make sure you shorten that stitch length so that when you go to stitch through the lines, it'll be easier to tear off at the end. You'll see more about this though in just a minute. Let's see. So I'm doing the paper piece version. Templates are just as easy though. Just trace them on your fabric. And yeah, let's get going. Alrighty, so let's talk about these paper pieced corners, or if you're using templates, the templates are just easy. Just follow the directions. I'm just going to show off my paper piecing version because you guys know how much I love them. And you'll see that you'll have two colors that are the beige, orange, beige, and then you'll have the bottom two corners will be three different colors, a teal, a dark orange, and that dark blue, and they're going to be mirrored from each other. So you have to make sure that you're doing one color combination and the other one the other color combination. Whew, say that 5 times fast. So I like to lay out my fabric in the order that I'm going to be piece it in. And I also want to say that if you feel like you're gonna screw this up, go ahead and mark on your paper. So we know that, like for instance, the beige, we can put the beige, I'll put B for beige, and then an orange for the center, and do that on 2 of them. Beige, orange, beige. But for the last 2, we'll call this teal, orange, blue, or dark teal. So we'll go teal, orange, and then dark blue. And you want to mirror that. So the dark blue will be over here, orange and teal. This will give you just a couple of different ways to keep track, because it will be important that you make these be the opposite, because otherwise you lose that kind of kaleidoscope effect when you put the blocks together at the very end of the year. All right, so let's jump in and let's do one of these blocks together. Okay, so I have my pieces of fabric, I got my paper, I got a couple pins in case I need them. I usually like to do a dab of glue. Here it is, hiding underneath the fabric. You'll see me use that in just a sec. This is just plain like office glue, because I'm just using a dab. I like to pre-fold all of my blocks first. Like I said, that just makes it easier and cuts down on the time, because I love paper piecing. I just want to get in there and sew. While we're talking about sewing, please remember to throw in a new needle. That'll make your life happy, and also reduce your stitches per inch to something shorter. So even just down to a 2.0, it's going to make your life way easier. All right, so I got the orange right there, and you'll notice, so these are the sizes of my fabric after I divvied everything up from my little sketch earlier. They're really, it's really big. See how much bigger these are than the other pieces? So don't worry about if you're going to have enough. See, I can put that right there, and you'll see I need to make sure it goes all the way to those outside edges. And guys, let me show you just something that I like to do anytime I'm paper piecing. So somebody asked this a while back, how do I know how big a piece of fabric I need when I get ready to paper piece. And you'll hear everybody say, oh, just do, make sure you do 1/4 of an inch bigger. But this is actually what exactly I do. I go and I measure the piece, and I add 1/4 of an inch. So like there's the 1/4 of an inch on the side. There's 1/4 of an inch over here. And I've actually just taped off on my ruler how big of a piece of fabric I need. So that way when I go to put it on a piece of fabric, I can lay it right down, and I know that that's how big of a piece that I need. Does that make sense? I even did that. Look, there's my ruler for my other piece. See, there's the other guy. So that way I know that I'm going to have exactly the right amount of fabric for all my paper piecing. Just somebody asked, I thought I would just show kind of the sneak peek behind the curtain, as it were. Let's get back to this piecing. So we're going to put that middle one in first. I'm going to do the middle one, then I'm going to do one on the outside and the other one on the outside. So let's do this one. Let's just fold this back. I'm just making sure that it's completely covered. Remember, I need to go all the way to the bottom down here, and it needs to go all the way at the top. Just want to make sure I'm going to have that in place. That looks good. I'm going to take my little fabric glue. A little dab of fabric to hold it. I don't use very much. It's just enough to give me a little bit of grip so that I don't lose the fabric when I'm moving around. You're going to want to cut off the extra if you need to. I'm pretty close, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm using this add 1/4 inch ruler. If you don't have this amazing guy, you can just use your regular ruler. Just line the edge of the paper up against your 1/4 of an inch. I like this because it has this little lip. And I'm going to turn this over, so I'm just going to put a little pin in just to be on the safe side. And now I want the beige fabric to be over here. So this is where I start doing a little bit of eyeballing. If I bend this over like this, and I'm overlapping more than 1/4 of an inch just to make sure, I'm making sure I'm going to get all the way past that little spot. There's the corner right there. I can see through the fabric or through the paper, and it looks good. So I'm going to lay this down. And these are really big pieces of fabric, so I'm going to put a couple of pins in. Notice that I'm putting the pins far away from where I'm going to be stitching. So now I can take it to the machine, and I'm actually going to start right here. I'm going to drop my needle in right there at that corner. I'm going to stitch all the way down, and I'm going to even go through that seam allowance right there. So it looks like it'll stay into place. So let me take this to the machine. I'll be right back and we'll talk about the next step. Alrighty, there we go. So I did the stitch. I took the pins out. I folded it out and open. I gave it a nice press. I didn't use any steam or anything. Because I don't want to get any water on the paper. But I just want to make sure it's nice and flat. And there we go. So we're ready to do that other side. So we do the same thing. Rinse and repeat. So I'm going to fold this page back. Now I can cut off all of this extra. So get out your ruler, whether it's this one or a regular ruler. I gotta tell you though, if you love paper piecing the way I do, this is invaluable to have. I'll put a link in the description below. And I'm going to do the same thing. We got to put this one on this side, and I'm just going to kind of make sure it's going to cover. And it is. Love big pieces of fabric for paper piecing. Especially as a beginner, you don't always know how much fabric you're going to need, and it's better to have too much than too little. Let me throw in a couple pins here along the edges. All right, and now this one is ready to sew all along as well. So I'm going to do the entire one. I'm going to go all the way through here, all the way down the line, and all the way past this seam allowance as well. So let me take this to the machine, and I'll be right back. All right, there's that second piece. I've already pressed it, so it's nice and flat and ready to go. So do this with all four corners, and then whether you want to wait till all of them are done or if you want to do them one at a time, the next step is to then trim away all this extra. Now we need to keep that seam allowance, so I'm placing this ruler just up against this edge. If you got a rotating mat, now's the time to break it out. That way you don't have to pick up the piece of fabric each time. And not only am I checking to make sure my seam allowance is still accurate, but I'm also checking to make sure everything is square before I take the blade to it. It's hard to see through that tape sometimes. There we go. And last but not least, there's that last one. All right, so this is a pretty big block. Tongue twisters today. A big block. It should be 6.5. Perfect. This is going to be huge, a huge block. So do this with all 4 corners. Remember, you're having 2 with this in this manner, and then the other 2 are mirror copies of each other. Just make sure that you're paying attention again to the picture and all that fun stuff. And once you have all of these done, let's move on to the next couple steps. All right, we just finished step 1 and 2. Let's talk about 3, which is about flying geese. And I actually filmed this next part early because you'll see several different flying geese, and anytime you go and make them, a couple of them are going to be used in multiple blocks. So you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 color variations. So let's go back in time and look at me putting together these flying geese blocks. Hit it, Cynthia. All right, so the second step is all about flying geese, and we're going to be making a lot of flying geese. You'll see there's that dark orange and the cream. There's that dark orange and that grayish blue, 2 of them. Light orange and the grayish blue, and then the very light teal and the very, very, very pale blue. You can see that I've done the pale blue one, I have done the light orange with that kind of grayish blue, and I've done the 2 blocks with the dark orange and the teal. Some of these, especially the ones that just have 1, are going to be used in all of the blocks. So you'll have to do all of your flying geese up front before you can do any of the entire piecing together. I'm just going to do one of them for the video so that you can see what we're doing. And it's my favorite method of making flying geese. It's the no waste method. So you'll have the big blocks here. Remember, you'll have a big block of this color, a big block of this color, a big block of this color, and another 2 more of this. That's going to be with the gray. I'm just doing that dark orange with the cream. So you got the big block right here. You're going to take 2 of the small ones and you're going to layer them down the center like this, and 1 on top. You'll notice that they will overlap in the middle right there. That's good. That's supposed to happen. I like to throw a couple pins in just to keep everything in place. Let me grab up a couple just to make sure, you know, it doesn't move around on us. And then the directions will say to draw a line right down that diagonal, because we're going to be doing a seam on either side of that diagonal, 1/4 inch seam. So you can take your regular ruler and you can just draw a line down that diagonal. I use my, this is the ruler I use when I'm making half square triangles, and it's going to draw that dash is going to be that center line, and then I can draw a line on either side of it, and that'll be where I'm going to seam. I kind of like to be able to see, you know, all 3 seams, where I'm going to cut, where I'm going to, you know, stitch. It's up to you though if you want to use this. I'll put a link in the description below of this tool. There's several different versions. And let me just mark it up. hopefully that pink shows up on camera so you can see that. And this little spot right there. So I'm going to stitch on the 2 outer sides. And then once that is stitched, I'm going to come back and I'm going to cut down that middle. So let me take this to the machine and then to the iron, and I'll be back in just a moment. All right, once you have that split in half, we're going to press these open, and then we're going to add our last block. So let me go press these real quick. All right, so there's those 2 pieces, and I'm just going to focus on one for right now, but you'll be doing this with both of them. So you're going to take one of the other squares and you're going to put it in the corner this way. So it's kind of like a heart shape right now. So now we're putting that last square in the bottom corner, and we're going to be doing the exact same thing. We're going to draw a line down that middle, or if you're like me, a line down the middle and on either side. That middle line, that's the cutting line. And then the other 2 lines on either side of it, that's the stitching lines. All right, so we do the exact same thing. We take this to the machine and we stitch those 2 lines down, and I'll be back in just a second. All right, now I can cut down the center. And we press these open now. And there we go. There's 2 flying geese. Don't remember to do the other one, so you get 2 more. So each big square will give you 4 flying geese. Now the last step I like to do, and this is just personal preference, I just like to make sure it's nice and square. It should be 3.5 by 6.5. It gets rid of all these little, dog ears and makes things look nice and pretty. So you can see I've already squared the other ones up. And in this case, so we'll have 4 from this block. That means you're going to be using one of these in each of the blocks. So I'll only need 1 to put this block together. So do all your flying geese and then come back and let's talk about the next step. Okay, we got the corners done. We got all those flying geese done. Let's head to that center of this block. So grab that pretty teal block and the 2 small brown squares. The first thing we need to do, and you'll see in the directions, is that these need to be cut diagonally just once. So let me do that really quickly here. Oops, as I hit the camera. Sorry. Shaky cam, shaky cam. All right, so now we'll have 4 triangles, and these are going to go around the sides of that square. Okay, so let me show you what I did, because I'm always aiming for perfection here. Not that I'm always perfect, but we aim for it. Is I like to do a little finger press at my centers, and I'm just using my nail here to give it just a little bit of a press. And then I do that with the triangles as well. And I'll just do 2 sides here so that you can see what I do. That way I make sure I have the same amount of overhang, because you'll notice that the triangle is longer than the square, but that's okay. That's the way we want it. And now these are going to go on top of this. So let me grab a pin. It'll be easier for you to see with a pin. So there's my little half press right there. So I find the half press on the triangle, which is right there, and it's nice because they almost just nestle in with each other. Drop a pin in right there, and on the other side, nestle it together, grab another pin. And this is how I will take it to the sewing machine. And I'll stitch my 1/4 of an inch, stitch my other side the 1/4 of an inch, then I'll take it to the iron, press them out, and then I'll come back and I'll do the exact same thing with my little halvesy mock press with my fingernail and do the other 2 sides as well. All right, so let's get this square done, and I'll see you in just a second. there we go. And just like I did with my flying geese, I do like to give these just a little trim up just to make sure they look pretty when I take them to the machine to put the other pieces on. So I'm going to do that really quickly. There we go. Doesn't it look much better with all those ugly little corners taken off? All right, so we got the corners done. We got the flying geese done. We got the center done. There's one step left of piecing before we can start putting our 9 patch together. So let's grab those last cream and blue fabrics. All right, we got one rectangle cream. This is actually going to be pieced alongside one of the flying geese, so we can set it aside. On the 2 little beige squares, we're going to need to draw a line. So whether you're going to be using that handy dandy 3-1 or just the regular one, it doesn't matter. I'll grab the regular ruler at the moment because we're just doing 1 stitch right down the center. You need to put these on both of these fabrics, corner to corner. All right, so we got these 2 squares. Now, if you look at both directions or that final block, these are these pieces. You'll see they're mirrored. You need one of these going one way, the diagonal, and the other one going the opposite way in that diagonal. And this is really simple. I'm just going to throw a couple pins in and I'm going to stitch right on top of that line that I just drew. Then I'm going to cut away all this extra stuff. Make sure you're cutting this side, not this side away. So that way when I open and press this open, it will look like that. So let me get this done. I'll take a few pictures and we'll see you in just a bit. Okay, so now we have all the components made. Now let's lay everything out and let's talk about putting this block together. I gotta zoom my camera up. Let's go. All right, so I've laid all the blocks out, so they all are kind of in the order that the picture is. I like to do this because it keeps me centered and making sure that I'm putting everything in the correct order in the correct place so that I, get all the different colors in the right area. Because you'll see when we put this together at the end, the kind of kaleidoscope effect, the different colors all blend together. It's really cool. Before we can get to piecing the rows, though, we need to put our north, south, east, and west blocks together. Those are the flying geese and the etc. pieces. So just going to talk about this. The instructions, of course, don't talk about pressing. And so I want you to feel comfortable doing what you want to do. Remember, there's no quilt police here. I'm just going to let you know what I'm going to do. For the north, east, and west, I'm going to press towards those outside ones because it's going to be a little less bulk if that's the piece that's folded as opposed to if this is the piece that's folded. That's just me. If you feel like opening it up or going the other direction, that's up to you. I'm doing something different down here at the bottom though because I have 2 flying geese that are pointing towards each other. I'm going to put a pin in at those points to make sure the points match really nicely, and then I'm going to open the seam up because that's a lot of bulk right here where those points are going to meet, and I just want it to lay nice and flat when I go to put the block together. So I'm out for these 3 and pressing open for this one. Again, that's just me. Please do what you feel comfortable doing. I'm going to do these blocks off camera. I'll take a couple of pictures, of course, and then we'll get back together and talk about putting what's going to be just a really complicated 9 patch. All right, so I'll see you in just a bit. All right, so I got the north, south, east, and west finished. Let me flip them over, one of them over, so you can see I went towards that bigger blue block here, and then the cream one here. And this one, just like I told you, I opened up to decrease that bulk there in the middle. And let's just talk about some of the things to watch for when we go to put these in rows. So we're going to do rows first. These points right here, that should be a halfway mark for that seam. Same along with this seam, so that 1/4 inch right here should match where the 1/4 inch is going to be right here on the orange. Same thing down here at the bottom. This is going to be a really cool effect. It's going to look like that light blue goes across into the middle. So that middle seam should line up with the 1/4 inch over here on that kite looking shape. Also in the middle, you'll see all the points. That's a 1/4 inch away. So what I would do is when I'm going to piece this together, I would have that teal one on top, and I would stitch along the side here so that I can see where that 1/4 inch is to make sure that I'm aiming my needle for it. That way you get nice crisp points. And I do that anytime I have a point. I did that with all of the flying geese as well, so that it gets a nice point right there up at the edge of the next block. Even down here I put a pin through just to make sure I get a nice crisp point. And yeah, so let's go make some rows first. And then we'll put the rows together to one big block and we'll be finished with this one. So let's get stitching. All right, so I have the 3 rows done, and before I put them together, I just want to address how I'm pressing, because the directions don't say, and this is what I have settled on. So let me turn this one over. I start with the center row, and I decided to press away from this center block towards that bigger piece of flying geese, because it's going to lay a little flatter and a little easier to fold over rather than fold the other way because of that, a lot of that fabric right there. So that means if I want it to nest, I need to fold the other ones the other way. So if they're folding out, that means I need to press these in so that it'll nest right there. Same way with the bottom one, press them in so that it'll nest right there. Your other options are to open up all of these seams, all of these middle ones, and that way you can just aim for those 1/4 inches a little easier, because you'll be able to see them a little easier. I think either choice will work great, so feel free to maybe try it one way on one block and another way on another one and see which one you like. Again, no quilt police here, just wanted to give you some options and let you know what I'm doing, and let's finish putting this block together and see how it looks. Back to the machine. Alright, and there it is. There's that pretty block, the Prairie Queen. Remember, we're doing this 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. So before I let you go, let me just turn over and let me talk to you about the last bit of pressing. I pressed away from this center block again because of that same, cross right there. It's just easier for it to fold this way. But like I said, a good opportunity to open up the seam and press it open as well. Whichever works for you. I want you to do what you are most comfortable with. No quilt police. And hey, if you found this video useful, please give me a little thumbs up. Tell all your friends and family, and stick around for next time. Month 8 is gonna be fun and exciting. I can't wait to see you then. See you later, and keep quilting. Bye-bye.